Great to see you, Matt. You're there, out in the country now. Many politicians would not recognise the scene behind you because it's not the Canberra bubble and it's not an inner city suburb like Marrickville. But this is the real Australia you're speaking to us from. Do you think many people in the, say, 100 kilometres near where you are, Matt, would enjoy a $115 breakfast courtesy of the taxpayer $20 orange juice?
No, I don't. I think you'd struggle to find a $20 orange juice up here in New England. My wife and I just had some breakfast at a lovely Vietnamese bakery, and I think it costs about $15. So we're well ahead.
You're well ahead.
It came out of our pocket. But did he have a power bowl or something? What the hell is that?
He did have a power bowl.
I mean, I don't. I mean, he seems to be being on a very good grass at the moment, Richard. But I don't think we're seeing any translation through to his performance because he's struggling to get extra funding through his cabinet, obviously, for the Defence Forces. That's a bit of a shame.
Maybe Chris Kenny could do another series, Labor in Powerball, all about Labor ministers with their noses in the trough enjoying the high life.
Different types of acai and who's got the best in the country.
Exactly. Now, Matt, we got you on to talk about net zero. So on Melbourne Cup Day, while the nation was, distracted with horses, farting horses, I imagine, Labor decided to release its net zero policies, which, of course, flew under the radar. But this involves, and I'm glad you are standing in the country there, because this involves a massive hit and potential destruction to farming, to industries, to agriculture, to land. Tell us what they're trying to do with this net zero lunacy.
Well, the Labor Party signed up to this global methane agreement last year. They did so a bit quietly, like they've done this week. And under that agreement, they've got to cut methane emissions by 30%. And some of the biggest, apparently the biggest emitters of methane, I don't make up the rules, but these are the carbon rules, come from cows. And so to cut 30% of emissions from cows, what are they going to have to do? Almost all the experts say you're going to have to reduce the number of cows around. You have to reduce the amount of beef we produce. You're going to have less income and economic opportunity out here in country areas. I mean, that's exactly what's happening in Europe, where they're implementing these policies. Right now, the Netherlands is doing this very thing, and they're openly looking to buy back and cull the 30% of their cattle herd. Now, the Labor Party is still saying, we're not going to do that. It's all okay. But that's what they said last year when they signed up to this agreement. They said, we won't do anything about it. It's just an agreement. It won't actually translate to anything. And then, as you say, this week they've announced that no, the Agriculture Minister has said the Agriculture Ministry has to cut their emissions by 30%. We're going to make sure they do it. We're just yet to see exactly which parts of the country are going to be hit by this policy.
James.
And tell me, you're up in New England right now. What is the reaction of people on the ground who work in these sectors whose livelihoods depend on it, who have for generations been feeding Australia and the world? I'm looking behind your shoulder there, Matt, and there's a noticeable lack of solar panels and wind farms there. And all I'm seeing
I think they're coming this way.
And all I'm seeing is planet-killing grass and trees. What are the reactions of people on the ground? And in seats that Labor took off of the coalition in the last election, is this going to become a big election issue when we get that next election in maybe 18 months?
Well, I reckon this will be an issue for all Australians because the way it's going here, the next time you go to a pub, you won't be debating whether to have chips or salad with your steak. It'll just be chips or salad. You won't get the main course, and that'll affect everyone in the country, regardless of whether you're out here in the bush or not. Because we can see meat prices for shops already going up. Beef's very expensive right now, and so what's going to happen if governments around the world cut back on cattle production by 30%, according to this agreement? It will push the price of beef up enormously, and that'll affect everybody, including, as you say, in seats where the Labor Party holds. And in terms of up here in the bush, people have just had a gutful because, as you say, there's no wind turbines on the hill behind me, but they are coming to a town near you. In almost every town in the country, there's a revolt here against these planet-destroying, koala-killing wind and solar factories. They're just blanketing our landscapes, taking away the beautiful, pristine natural landscape we have. And even worse, they're not actually doing anything that helps us. Your electricity is not getting better, it's just getting dearer. So the more of these wind factories and solar factories we put up, the higher your price of power goes as well. We destroy our natural environment and pay more for power at the end of the day, apart from that, James, it's an excellent deal.
Now, the Prime Minister, Matt, was at the Pacific Islands Forum. He had the checkbook out. Everyone's getting our money. But he also signed this agreement to accept climate refugees from Tuvalu. Tell me about this. I mean, the last time we had some data on this, wasn't that country actually growing in land mass? But he made it sound like they're about to sink into the ocean any second now.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And the worst thing about the whole climate debate is the lies. The constant lying that occurs to the Australian people about what is actually happening on the ground. Now, clearly what Tuvalu wants is some extra funding from the Commonwealth Government. Tuvalu people would like the opportunity to move to Australia, obviously, and they're using this climate paranoia to further their ends. Good luck to Tuvalu. But we're just gullible enough in the West to buy all this when, as you say, all of the evidence and data shows that Tuvalu is actually growing. It's been growing over the past couple of decades in size, hasn't been shrinking. And so this sort of idea, but it's written up in the Australian papers as if the oceans, the tides are lapping at the doorsteps of the poor people of Tuvalu, and they need to be airlifted out ASAP before they all drown. Nothing could be further from the truth. So, we're just going to have to cop higher amounts of migration, apparently, under this Labor government. I don't think we were promised that before the last election. I don't think Anthony Albanese levelled with the Australian people that he wanted to take migration levels to about double what they normally are. And that's what we're having right now. And that's why housing is such an issue. It's why the cost of living is going up so high. And we need to have a real question about why are we taking so many people in this country when Australians who live here don't have a home to live in.
And the climate catastrophists, even at the ABC, said that, Tuvalu had grown by 2.9% of usable land with the latest data. I think that came out in 2018. But is this going to set a precedent? Are we going to see other countries say, well, climate refugees are being accepted from Tuvalu, so why not from our countries? Is that going to put pressure on us to have similar agreements with other neighbours?
Yeah, so this agreement with Tuvalu is apparently only for a couple of hundred people, but exactly right. Once we sign this for Tuvalu, there'll be every country, every man his dog will want to be a climate refugee. And of course, that's not because they're escaping climate, it's because they want to come to the great country that is Australia. Sure. And we saw over the last few decades that people would claim political asylum, be political refugees when they clearly weren't. They were economic refugees. That door's been shut thanks to the former Abbott government that stopped the boats. And so now we're going to see, instead of being political refugees, they'll be climate refugees, when really, they're simply economic refugees that want a better future. I don't know why they're all coming to Australia, though, because haven't we been all told that the climate change is going to devastate this country? We'll be constantly in bushfires.
And also there'll be no cows. They won't have any food because there won't be any cows. James.
It's amazing, Matt, that all of these...
If we have to offer asylum for climate, we shouldn't be this country. I think we all need to go to Siberia, don't we?
I know. It's amazing, Matt, that all of these people from all over the world want to come to this, climate-affected racist hellhole that the left keeps telling us it is. But on that issue, though, of migration, we had some really interesting figures come out this week that showed that Australian standard of living had dropped by 5.1%, the greatest of any major economy. And a large part of that, they said, the economists said, was due to the surge in migration. That's their words, not mine. Is the coalition going to be prepared to do something about this big Australia policy, which I think both sides of politics have been, very open to, because big business wants it? And so, if big business wants it, then, well, the rest of us just have to cop it.
Well, let's be very clear. The surge in migration that we've seen has happened since the election. It didn't happen before, it happened since the election. And as I said, that wasn't something that Anthony Albanese took to the Australian people. And he and his government has a lot of responsibility here for the greatest reduction in living standards anywhere in the developed world, because they've taken all this migration without thinking about how it affects our infrastructure, our housing, and all the other costs that have then rebounded on Australians. When we were last in government, we actually cut the migration intake before COVID. Obviously, then we closed the borders during COVID. But before COVID, we cut the migration intake because we did think there were too many people coming to the country. So I hope, and Peter Dutton was the immigration minister where that happened. So I hope that Peter Dutton will look at this. I've raised this in the party room. I'll leave it to Peter Dutton to make announcements before the election. But I definitely think that this country cannot take the size of Canberra every year coming into our nation, certainly not with the red tape and restrictions we have on development right now. We need to match our migration intake with our ability and capacity to take in people. We have no responsibility or duty to take in a certain amount of numbers of people from overseas. We need to make sure that those numbers, the migration policy we set, is in the best interest of Australians, regardless of what the rest of the world thinks of us.
Senator Matt Canavan, always great chatting to you. Enjoy the rest of the day up there in New England, and we'll speak to you again soon.